Okay, so we will get into using team services for the group project, which is why there were a couple of students who said that they couldn't come for either health or other things. Like if you have an emergency, then you can let me know. But two other students didn't, and by the way, I do keep track of it, and ultimately, if you get a lower grade, that obviously is because you have not showed up. But I'm telling somebody who is, I guess all of you have been here, or if you missed, you have let me know. So anyways, coming back to this, so we will get into the team project at least for a little bit today. And the other pieces that I want you to understand, unit testing. Where do you think unit testing fits in Agile development? At what point do you start developing your tests? In the conventional mode, we said you do your testing after you do all your other development. So where does Agile testing come in?
I'd say it happens along the way, like as you develop each method or process or whatever, so that you can test it as you go.
Okay. Eric's suggestion is, well, we sort of one of the first things we develop in the MDC is the model. So as we are creating this to create the test, this is one of the things I need to sort of bring some more of Scrum into our discussion. If you want to explore Scrum, I've told you there are some components that are open source, available on the Scrum Alliance website. So if you want to, there's a fair amount of resources and documentation. In fact, I would, in telling the all 52 students that I would recommend looking at Scrum certification if you're looking the next 5-10 years. I think a lot of companies which have not already switched to Agile will start doing so. So this is an area that sort of gives you opportunities. So anyways, one thought is to do it as your when you create your method, and then off of the method you build a test for that method. So that's one way of looking at it. Is there any other approach to creating tests? A second approach, obviously, is to do it at the very end after you. What's the problem with doing it at the very end after you've developed all the other logic? If it doesn't work and you've set up your front end and all of the other pieces, so it has an impact on, so the amount of change you have to do becomes significantly greater and magnified each time. The later you have to make those changes in the development process. So there are these two views. What is the third view, which actually is what the purists would recommend? Yeah.
So in the backlog, like when it gets assigned, you could do the testing like right before it gets moved on to like the next block.
Yeah, so you're saying backlog, you went into Visual Studio, I'm assuming, or Team Services?
Yeah.
Okay. I need to go to my subscriber portal. one is the layers?
In the middle.
Okay. Let's just sign in as myself. Yeah, I might have to sign out of every I'll come to that a little later, but the issue of when do you do your testing, one of the approaches is actually something called test development. It's or you test driven development, which if you're a sort of a pure agile or Scrum developer, you tend to do this. Even before you have a model. So, for example, if I'm, let's say, creating another functionality or method, which is, let's say, I'm summing up, I'll just call this test method. Public void find sum of or n numbers. Okay, so if I were to, obviously if I were to try to run this will fail. We've been creating our tests as what type of these are what type of methods? These are class methods, right? So I would say calculator dot find sum of n numbers, because I'm basically setting it up before I set up anything in the model. Now, find sum of n numbers. What does it expect? You're expecting an input of and whatever that n is. So it's going to be somewhat similar to the input term, which is the nth number that the user provides. So I'll be saying input term, and I might give a starting value, right, 6. And I might say again, whenever we set up our tests, what do we need to do? For our tests, what are the components of our tests? Okay.
We can check it, right? The third party.
Yeah, we have to check our assertion. The assertion, so assert are equal, and what are they trying to check if they're equal? Yeah, so it's always a check between an expected and actual. So you have to set up what? By now this should be very ingrained in you, otherwise you have not understood testing, right? So, I mean, if you can do it, okay, you do it and show me that you can. Ultimately, in our area, one of the things is it's not just about talking; it's about doing. So that's why I'm very particular that you be able to do it. Can you send it out? copy to the new one. If you're doing test-driven development, this is what you will be doing. What are you doing, Chris? Where are we right now? Chris, where are you?
So we're starting with the test class right now?
Yeah, we are in the test class. What is it called? It's called test-driven development, right? So we start with tests.
Yeah.
So what we are saying is this is what needs to work for the model or the logic to be considered to be good enough. So that's why we are in the test. And with a test, you always need, you're comparing an expected with an actual. So what I'm asking you to do is to come up with the expected and the actual. Yes.
Just to be clear, when you say input term equals 6, does that mean you're adding or finding the sum of all the numbers between 1 and 6, right? So 1 plus 2 plus 3.
Yes. Have you written down these statements here? How many is your time?
It's not actually really
Fine. So you could give a some whatever it is. Yeah, that's fine. And then you can write your, where is the other one giving it to me?
mentioned some.
Let's try and make it work. Okay, once you have it, what's that? Yeah. Okay. You can. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You have to do your just now. Yeah, and then that's something I still have to set up. If you do that, I won't allow you in class. No, that's not acceptable at all.
I have my work number.
What's that? No, there's no. If you're in class, you're focusing on that. You're not texting and other nonsense. If you are, you have to leave. And if I see you again, I will ask you to leave. you have to focus on, this is basic discipline. Okay, if you're done with that, the next step is what? Why would you have find sum of numbers underlined? Why is that
We don't have enough.
yes, so create the method. Yes. You have to tell me that it's not you doing the asking, you have to, one of the things, how do you know whether something is right? So, why are you going beyond? We are not looking at Fibonacci now, we are looking at just some. How did you have? Eric just did the very simple thing of just saying he's going to have the system added up. He didn't want to do the addition himself. So what does it add up to? 21. And then obviously you are comparing the expected with the actual. Okay, you shouldn't be looking up here, you should be only looking up here to validate what you have done. And finally, the actual sum comes from the model, and so this is the only thing that should be showing up as an error. So what have we done? We have created the test first. Okay. So this is one of the approaches, or the recommended approach if you are following a pure agile approach. You first start with what you want what the method or logic needs to do even before you set up the method itself. And in this case, we are just saying one of these you might want to set up multiple tests for that same method so that it has to pass. So when do we know it has done? When all of these tests pass. Okay, so the simplest thing is it currently doesn't have any definition of method, and so you could even say generate this stub. So I could actually use this light bulb and have it generate an empty stub in calculator called find sum of numbers. Okay, so it generates this empty stub just based off of this whatever the error was, and I went through the auto generate, which gives me just it doesn't give me anything further than the method signature. Obviously, I have to do something inside of it to figure out what exactly. So it's in. This is the sum, okay. And then I want to return the sum. So if I don't want to have this generate an error, return 0. And initially, when you run this, return sum, not 0. Initially, if I run this test, all of your tests, even after it compiles, initially you don't have the logic, so when you run the test, you should find this new test that you just created. All the other 3 tests should run fine. Obviously, the 4th test should fail because you're asserting the expected value is 21, and the actual that's being returned is just 0. So set up the logic inside of this so that you get the correct value and the test passes. So this is all even the method find sum of numbers best is indicating from what is done. We have it. Other tests up there. Well, you have to tell me what is wrong with the logic here. What method are you calling? Like, do you call the test method? The test method is only used for testing, so we really don't call the test method. What do we call? We are calling methods. If you look at the test, all the methods that we call are methods that we have defined inside of the calculator class in the model. Okay. So this test, there are some things to just each one of these has to, how does the system know it's a test method? It's with this property or attribute on top within the square bracket. So if you don't have this, it's not considered a test. The second thing that you have to do is you don't call this test method from inside here. In fact, you almost never call another test method. Instead, you're calling a method that's in the model. Okay, so this method needs to be in the model. And once you have set up this, we've set it up again. It automatically generated static. And this, what does this mean? How many of you know? Okay. Somebody who, let's see, Ashley, what does this mean, having some static keywords here? Liv, do you remember?
They can't be changed by outside methods. You don't have to initialize the calculator in your test box.
So you gave me 2 answers. It cannot be changed by outside classes, methods, and it doesn't have to be initialized. So one of those 2 is correct. Static, the other part that you were implying is with access type. So it's not so much as changed as much as it cannot be accessed. If you change the access type from public to protected or private, then it makes it not accessible. Whereas public makes it accessible. So static is what you said, the second thing, which is we don't need to create an instance of the calculated class. So that's one thing. So I basically said it's returning an integer, and Ashley was having a problem when she did this. Why would she have a problem if she does this? Ashley, can you tell us why you were having this error? Yeah. So if you specify it's void in the signature, what is the method promising? Yeah, and then if you have a return statement inside, you're basically contradicting what the method is promising. It's saying I'm not returning anything, but inside you're saying I am returning something. So instead you are actually returning an integer. Okay. And then obviously the logic was the only missing piece. So how many of you fixed this logic? Let's see. The other tests. Well, there are 3 other tests for the Fibonacci. Maybe you can show those 3 tests. And well, go to your test and
so the second one, it's running by that job, but not by the
so can you show the test and go there? Well, the thing is, I cannot be dealing with that. You have to figure out where it's working. And if it's working on the lab computer, you have to have it on a thumb drive. You can get consistently. Okay, so who is having it working? Eric, you are? Okay. It's not recognizing calculator. Yeah. What does it say? It does not contain a definition for. It is the same thing that Ashley did. What are you calling it?
yeah.
One number and it's going to add together.
You don't want to be creating those extra variables.
No.
You've taken 352, right? Okay. So there's one student who hadn't. If you understand, you'll have to work on loops to understand this because you don't want to be creating you have a loop that basically takes care of that without you having
no. Yeah, but that's something
you won't get started your sum at 0.
Oh, yeah.
Some other failing.
It's completely different.
Not your number. It's not recognizing the series. What's 0? You might have missed 12. name and one way to do it with the loop, it's which I saw Eric, Ellie, and Megan had done that.
Yeah, I got it written down, yeah.
That's the, actually, do you have it working now? No? Okay. Or you can go back 250 years ago and do what, have you heard of this name? Yes, no? Okay, so I guess this was supposed to be a problem that was given to him as a 9 or 10-year-old. Find the sum of, I think the teacher, based on various accounts, gives. To find the sum of the first, either the first 100 or the first 1,000 numbers. So if we apply what Eric did, it's going to be, well, obviously he just kept writing and asking the computer to do it, but even if he was to type it out, it's going to take a long time. So he actually figured it out. So if you just go up to 10, you can sort of try this out. He basically wanted to bring it to, if you're counting up to 10, you want to try to bring it up to some number like 10. It actually, well, you want to make it in tens. What does that mean? 1 plus 9 is 10. 2 plus 8 is 10. 3 plus 7 is 10. And so on. So basically, it comes down to you can do this. He generated this formula: n times n plus 1 divided by 2. So basically, it becomes easier if all of these get added up to 10, right? And 4 plus 6, and then you have a 5. So if you add this up, it's 10 plus whatever how many tens are there? 4 tens, 50 plus 5, 55. And then you have the 5. So here it's the nth term is 10, so 10 times 11 divided by 2. So, and 10 divided by 2 is what? 5. 5 times 11 is 55. So if you apply this, you could do it instead of the loop. So it will be a formula that you're using instead of going through a loop. Which do you think will be faster to process? If you have a formula or an well, if it doesn't involve any iteration takes time. So you could apply this as well. So apply one of these. So sum equals, if you want, the input term times input term plus 1, and if you want to be absolutely sure, put extra parentheses divided by 2. And now if I were to run this, run all, usually you don't want to just run the fail test, but you want to run all, so that you, in this case, each method is sort of totally independent, but in case they are not. Okay. The other approach is to set up a loop and go over it, which is also fine. But if you are going to use the formula, this is the formula that you would apply on it to calculate the sum. There are others also for doing various other operations. Some of the other environments which, well, you'll see a little bit of it. I'm getting more into data analytics a little bit. Is it Megan? Are you at Nablus or is it okay? So have you worked on any of the data analytics that's yet? Oh, in the summer. Okay. Have they told you what programming language environment they use? Does anyone know? Yeah.
Yeah, they use R.
Okay. Yeah, R is one. Yeah, the other one is Python. And Python is it's an object-oriented language. R is a very peculiar language. It's a functional language, so it's a different way of thinking. Have you looked at the code? So anyways, these two have a lot of libraries, open source, both libraries built in that allow you to use like a lot of these types of methods. This is obviously very simplistic, but they have a lot more math operations built into their libraries. You'll see some of it later on, either this semester or into fall. I'll try to introduce it this semester. Okay, so now that we have this set up, so this is test-driven development. How many of you have these tests working now? Your test is not working?
I thought it was going to work.
Okay.
It told me my action number was 5, not.
No. Okay, so did you use a loop or did you use this? You initially had a loop.
I used the loop.
Okay.
I haven't changed it yet. I was trying to figure out what it was.
Okay, so if you set up a loop for int, where do you start? Index. Eric, where did you start this?
Started with 1.
Yeah, because basically the first number is 1, 0 doesn't make a difference. And then up to what point do you want to go? Okay, you want to go up to the input time, so you want to include this. And then you want to keep incrementing the index. And within the loop, and this is what I was telling Chris, if you don't want to be setting up like some number 1 equals something, and so with loops, it's more efficient, and you want to sort of minimize. Clean code is minimal code. You don't want to. So inside, what do you do?
I just said sum equals sum plus index.
Okay, sum plus index. Okay, so that's one thing. What's potentially even simpler? Okay, so this is the same as saying sum plus equal index. Okay.
I did try that. It gave you a little squiggly and said that plus equals wasn't an operator.
Equal plus.
I did plus equals.
Oh, I did equal plus.
Okay. Try it out. It shouldn't be a syntax error. Megan pointed out it's equal plus equals should work. I'm almost sure you live equals plus rather than plus equals. But anyways, this is allowed in most languages, but if you want to make it clearer, you could do this. Anyways, so either one, obviously you don't want both, but if you have both, what's going to happen? It's going to try it twice, but I think it's going to reset it, right? So it's going to give you the correct answer. It's just going to do the processing twice. Okay, so the thing is now, as I said, we've gone through this a few times, and I again revisited this test so that you understand the testing process. And if you're doing pure test-driven development, you want to start with the test, say these, and you might want to look at other numbers as well. And if you want to be really particular, let's say you don't want to allow negative numbers, you have to say if it's a negative number, what do you want the expected sum to come back as? If we just want to do this as a sum of whatever, if I were to put this as input term was -5 int expected sum, if I only want to deal with positive sum, we could try to go with the absolute value, but if we just say, well, they're giving a negative number, so if either we have to say, okay, we'll sum whatever negative number to 0, or we will have to say we don't deal with negative numbers. And so let's say we don't deal with negative numbers, so we come back with an expected sum of 0. So I don't want to redeclare it. So in which case the actual should also be 0. So what we were doing earlier was we were not looking for unexpected values. And this is something you have to think of as when you're testing applications. There is a small percentage, and maybe you're among them, some of you, who will deliberately try to break applications, right? How many of you have tried to do that? So actually, it's so some cases it's not going to be like the problems are not huge, like in this case. But if this were it's a banking application that you're working on, like Plus Consulting works on projects for UPMC. I think they had a contract with some one of the banks there. Yeah, so if you're working on projects in either health or finance, you have to make sure that these extremes are taken care of. So in this case, what we have here then won't be sufficient. What would we have to do? Yeah.
You have to do a statement to make sure you're getting the possibility.
Yeah, so if input I don't know if there is an is positive, but in some languages there are. Yeah, so here we have to basically say if input is less than 0, and then what do we do? Yep. Yeah. Else, so if you add the for loop, the else would come inside of that. Otherwise, in my case here, I would take this. Okay, so now if I were to, whenever I change code, I want to build this. And then once it builds, come back and run all to make sure it passes this extra requirement. And you might want to also send a string back saying if some kind of information saying if it's less than 0, invalid value or something like that. So Okay, so once you have this, and I'm taking much longer than expected because I'd assume that all of you are very comfortable with this part. I didn't expect you to be having trouble with. Okay, so the next part was model view controller, of which we just saw the M part, right? So the other parts are the view and the controller. Okay, so, and we discussed this with the controller. Okay, calculator controller. We have this fine Fibonacci, and this which connects to the fine Fibonacci. The controller method connects to, what's it connecting to? Communicating with the model, right? The methods in the model, and the values that it gets, it is sending to the view. Okay, so those are the connections between the model controller and the view. Okay, and let's see if there's an easy way of, let's say that you get this. I don't want to have to do all of everything again, but let's say we want to just display. So if I were to run this now, I used what Logan suggested to display this. Now, let's say you have this Fibonacci result, and at the end you want to display the sum. The sum is whatever the result we got. For the sixth term, it would be 21. So how many of you can get that below here? Like, we want to display this, and at the end of it we want the sum to be displayed. The sum of whatever 6 terms. Can you do that? Okay. If you can do that, you don't have to create a new method in the controller. Just use this. It's sort of a little deceptive because you're going to say Fibonacci result, but that's fine. At the end, we just want to say the sum is whatever the value. Well, we're just passing.
What?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe now I'll get just passing.
Yeah.
Okay. Just passing.
Yeah.
Okay. This is actually a very simple addition to the controller and the view. I want to see if you understand that, to make the connection between the controller and the model, and then controller to the view. What's that? We just want to display the sum, and you want to display it at the very bottom after you display all the Fibonacci information. What's that? Localhost reduced to connect. I ran it on my machine and it was running something that you can try to go into project properties, see if that. Yeah. Just include, just click on that. And see if that helps you. Save it. Current base if one of the things that you might want to do to avoid errors, I think I discussed it in that Thursday session. Go to project, the project properties, and what did we change from current page to specific page? That takes it to, and the specific page, the notation in MVC is you give the name of the controller / name of the method, so you don't have to give a file name. In other environments like PHP, you have to give, MVC just gives a path, and it should work. Yes?
That doesn't resolve the issue.
This doesn't resolve the issue? Well, what this resolves is really just the, it prevents, like, the current page is not a view page. If it's a controller, for example, it will generate an error. So whatever is open on Visual Studio, this will go find the right view to display. So that's the only benefit of this. But if you want to look at publishing, okay, web. So for Live, do you see this IIS Express on your web options, the property option? Just the IIS Express, and do you have a project URL associated there?
I have like one of the
Okay. If you have those two, then it should be working. I don't know what would cause a problem. And as I said, it worked on my machine. So
Do you think it has anything to do with running a virtual machine?
I don't know the answer to that because the person who runs it, who has done a lot of experimentation with MacBook, is Mike James. He usually sits there. You might want to ask him. Is the same issue with you?
Okay. Yeah. It just doesn't continue to look first.
And this is continuing to happen all the time. Okay. We make sure the web address is correct. Why don't you try running it on the lab machine and see if it's because with Liv's project I was able to run it on my machine. It's very, very simple. You have it from the controller, what did you get? So my what did you do on the view? So in the controller, what did you call this? Oh, is it example? No, actually. Oh, does that not matter? Well, no, you have to see what variable you use in the view bag. The view bag that takes it over. we are creating entire different one. Okay, I just said you can use the same controller. Yeah, well, it's just to make it simpler. But if you're going through creating an entire new one, that's fine. You just take a longer time. You'll have to get the input as well. Actually, do you have it? What are all your tests failing? Restricted one actual 13. So what you need to do is put breakpoints to so that's how you understand it. Otherwise, so for this, what are you doing? Okay, well, input term is going to be whatever 6 or something. If you go back to your controller, so the model has done its work. You want to get the value from the model and pass it on to the view. If Megan has done a little extra work, but what she has done is to create another controller method. So she went into controller calculator, and then so you have to have 2 more methods: one for the view to accept the input, one to process it. But if we take the simpler approach to just get it inside of the same find Fibonacci, so we have to retrieve the values. So int sum equals to calculator dot. We are using the model method, and so the controller speaks to the controller communicates with what over here? With the model. So controller communicating with the model. And then what's the other piece? The controller is sort of the middleman here. It's speaking to the model to get the value. It has already spoken to the view to get the input down. Okay, so and now the controller needs to speak with the view. Okay, so it's going to send data to the view, but the sum is not yet in the data to be sent over. So we were saying there's a simple way of doing it, which is using the view bag. So I'm going to create a variable called sum for the view bag to take over to the view. And then if I go into the result view, all that I'm doing is to display the sum of whatever the of some number. So what do I say? So if I just said sum of 6 numbers, that's going to be, you never want to hard code this. So what is it the sum of? Which one?
I don't know, like the input term and numbers. I would just say the sum of numbers.
Okay, but I can say sum of, I can get the number that the user has provided. How can I get it? Chris? Yeah, the view bag is carrying over the input term to the controller, to the view. So So I can retrieve the number that the user provided, viewback dot. I have to use exactly the same uppercase INT. The sum of n numbers, this number of numbers is, and again I go to my viewback dot, and I call this variable sum. And anytime I make a change to C#, I cannot just refresh this. If I refresh it, whatever is changed on the view will show up, but not what is on the C# side. So, okay, so if I put this in. Okay, so how many of you, I guess, Eric, is it showing up on your?
I'm working on it.
Let's see what you have in the adding an extra method in the controller. It's going to enter this and prompt it. So it was showing you the sort of went to that other view where you're getting the input. Okay. It's not activating it, so go into that view where you are getting the input. This is the result view, the other view. Okay, so it seems to be fine. So what you need to do is put a breakpoint in your, if you go not here, but into your controller, just inside the method. So see if it's coming back. So run it in debug mode to see if
I don't have my
so your laptop doesn't open up Visual Studio, did you say?
Well, it's just that my personal desktop or parallel.
And is this happening fairly frequently?
No, it just happened.
Okay, because as I said, Mike is probably the best person to ask to having some problems. But then you're going to keep falling further behind. Is it going to your?
It's just a straight here.
So if you type in a value, does it go to the controller? You go to the Visual Studio and see what's in there. If that's come, so it's come to that point, Well, just scroll down and no breakpoints. Yeah, so you have to then see, is it going to the result view? You might want to put a breakpoint in the result view. It might be is it showing up here? Okay, that's what I was telling you, that on my machine I'm getting those areas, so I don't know what's the... okay, so if we... one of the things that I want to do, well, you'll have to get we've gone over this a few times, so I want all of you to have it functioning fully. Right as of now, only Hallie and Logan seem to have it functioning, which is not very encouraging, because I thought this was like a 10, 15. Chris, do you have it? Do you have all your tests working?
Yeah.
You do now. Okay, so you have us. Okay. Okay, just the enter value. Okay, so come into your breakpoint there. Okay, so
I just tried to run my test again, and now my Fibonacci number is failing. But I haven't changed it.
the test is failing.
Yeah.
What's its name?
Didn't get any sure.
That was when you went through those breakpoints on the controller, did it take you into the model and then give you an error?
I just stopped.
Okay, so it's some kind of endless loop. So it maybe you are going to the request evaluation aspect.
This is my test.
You make sure you're calling the request. Obviously, it's either going into the loop endlessly or it is. So if you enter at 6, so again you'll have to put a breakpoint to see what's happening inside of it. So other than, okay, Liv, is your result coming out? No?
Maybe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, what's the running now?
Okay. It looks weird. And it said there were no errors, but also it...
When you run it, it's, okay. Okay, just enter a value and see if it's giving you. Okay, so it is giving you the. Okay, the build areas are maybe in the view, which is, if it's in the view, if it's saying some library is missing, it usually it still runs. Okay. Yeah, I want you, before you, at the beginning of class, I really want to see all of you with the tests running. So if your tests, any of them are failing, just go and use breakpoints, check where the logic fails, and then connect it up with the controller in view to provide a result like this. Okay. Next class, I'm going to get into, I've set up SQL Server databases on a server for each of you, so I'm going to discuss how to access that. Also asked you to look at the user stories, use cases, requirements for college basketball, which we'll discuss. So that's what we'll do for tomorrow, for Thursday, as well as look at your projects with team services. Okay, I'll see you on Thursday then.
Mike comes in to the next class.
What's that?
Mike comes in to the next.
Yeah, he'll come. He'll probably already be outside.